Frempong about he will speak about the development of newborn screening for sickle cell disease. Please, Dr. Frempong.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. I know that many people are still out enjoying a little bit of the break, but we'll get started. So newborn screening for sickle cell disease was not, for where it was started in the U.S., was not the first disorder to be screened in newborns. And so it took advantage of an existing public health program, which made it easy for newborn screening for sickle cell disease to become instituted in most of the states in the U.S. over a short period of time. But even in the U.S., it took a long time before all the states got into newborn screening. And it's taking us in the rest of the world even longer time to institute this as a public health intervention. Today I'm going to be held by this young lady here in my presentation, and her name is Cute. She is a child that was photographed by a professional photographer from Australia who was in Ghana doing some educational programs for us in our sickle cell disease programs, and she's just so very, very happy looking child that we decided to take some pictures of her for our presentation. It was back in 1986 that this paper was published in the New England Journal of Medicine, the first penicillin prophylaxis study that was conducted by the same group that was involved in the cooperative study of sickle cell disease, the largest clinical study done in the United States. In this study, about 2/3 of the patients were under 20 years of age, and a group of the children, 650, had been screened as newborns just for this long-term follow-up. In the first 2-3 years of that study, the problem of pneumococcal infection had become very well documented. And so even though the cooperative study was not designed as a clinical trial, they decided to do a trial of penicillin to see whether they could reduce the rates of pneumococcal infection in young children with sickle cell disease and hopefully also reduce mortality. So this paper changed a lot about what we do in children with sickle cell disease. The year after the publication in 1987, a conference was held in Bethesda, Maryland, where the National Institute of Health is based. It was a meeting organized by the NIH and other government institutions, American Society of Hematology. It was a consensus development conference that posed the question as to whether all children born in the U.S. should be tested at birth for sickle cell disease as a public health intervention that can save the lives of those who are affected by the disease because of the effectiveness of penicillin as preventive therapy. So this was the first time that sickle cell disease really had entered into the main public health arena of the United States. So state by state started doing newborn screening. But before 1987, the first state to actually start screening babies in the U.S. was New York State. In 1975, I had just started my residency in New York City, and we started getting referrals of babies with sickle cell disease. There was no clear protocol as to why newborn screening was being done at that time, except there was some general feeling that if we diagnose sickle cell disease early in these children, we'll be able to provide them better care. But penicillin prophylaxis was not part of the picture, except that at Yale University in 1972, Howard Pearson, who was head of pediatric hematology at the time, had actually started screening newborn babies for sickle cell disease for the purpose of penicillin prophylaxis. He had documented splenic dysfunction in children as they were growing, and felt that penicillin could protect them from this infection. So newborn screening as a public health program started in New York City, but newborn screening for the purpose of intervention had started at Yale in 1972. So in 1989, 1991, I had just finished my fellowship in pediatrics and started a career starting a sickle cell program in Louisiana for Tulane University Medical Center, and then returned to Children's Hospital of Philadelphia to be part of the NIH Comprehensive Sickle Cell Center program. And for our funding cycle, 5-year funding cycle of 1993 to 1998, I decided to write a small part of the project to initiate newborn screening for sickle cell disease in Africa, in Ghana, where I'm from. So this project was initiated after consultation with the Ghana government, Ministry of Health, the major hospitals, the medical schools, and eventually the government decided where we should start the newborn screening as a pilot project. And as part of it, we actually started a clinic in the second largest city in Ghana called Kumasi in preparation for the grant. This is Ghana, now about 28 million people with a high birth rate, has annual births of about 870,000 babies a year. And Kumasi, in red, in that red circle, sits in the middle of the country. At that time, Kumasi is the second largest city in Ghana, but back in 1993, there was only one sickle cell clinic in the country, in the capital city, Accra. And the government thought that this project could help us initiate another sickle cell clinic in the country. So in 1992, we actually started a clinic at this hospital called Komfanochi Teaching Hospital. And that eventually is where we started newborn screening as a pilot project in Ghana. So we inaugurated the clinic in December 1992, and the award from NIH actually started in April 1993. We sent some lab technicians and nurses to the US for training, and when they came back, we opened our laboratory at a research institute called Noguchi Memorial Institute for Medical Research, and that has served as our newborn screening lab since that time. One of the first things that we did when we got the NIH funding was to form a newborn screening advisory committee. This was a new public health event. There had not been newborn screening for any disorder in the country, and so we couldn't count on anybody who actually had experience in it in Ghana. But I thought that a committee that is made up of the leaders in public health in the city and the region where we were starting would be very useful. And so people in these positions were really the leaders of the major hospitals and the public health service. And they actually took the project as their own and helped us initiate it, getting all the support we needed, at least administrative support from government. They met twice a year, and our teams reported to them. By design, we divided the project into components. The laboratory component was based at the Research Institute, and then there was a screening component that would be made up of public health nurses working in primary care, in maternity, and also in pediatric immunization programs. A health education unit handled the educational aspects of it, and then the clinical component was based at the hospital to take care of the children that will be diagnosed through the program. And we started a clinical lab for hemoglobin disorders at the hospital also. And the entire project was overseen by the newborn screening advisory committee. So we actually started the newborn screening in 1995. It took us a year and a half to get things ready, all the training, get the clinic established, and also to get the laboratory equipped and working. And in 2 years, we added a rural model. I asked the Ministry of Health to pick a rural area 25 miles from the big city so that we can learn how to do newborn screening also in a very rural area. That area was called Tikro. This is the entrance to one of the buildings at Noguchi, which still functions as our newborn screening lab. This is our lab, a small part of it. And the procedures we use in the lab are somewhat standard. Our screening test is isoelectric focusing, and samples that have possible sickle cell disease are repeated with the same method. Those that have presumptive sickle cell disease are retested on a second sample with HPLC, or sometimes when we can't afford the HPLC reagents, we use the IEF to do the second testing again. And now we are considering that the confirmatory testing could actually use some of the point-of-care tests that I described, because they're reasonably inexpensive. This is the first day that we started. That baby was the first one that was screened on February 13th, 1995. And since then, we've been screening. So she's asking, why did her daddy bring her to the place where she's going to get screened? In 2004, the NIH grant was in its third cycle, and we knew it was going to end in 2008. So we formed the Sickle Cell Foundation of Ghana to become the primary advocate to urge government to take over the newborn screening program, and also to develop more sickle cell programs in the country. And I also needed some more help, so I went to the government of Brazil. I had been teaching in Brazil, attending conferences and doing some teaching about newborn screening since the year 2000. And as the Brazil program grew, we asked Brazil government to help us. So they also became partners with Ghana, trying to help us expand our newborn screening effort. In 2010, the government established the National Newborn Screening Program for Sickle Cell Disease as a formal program of the Ministry of Health. Also set up a technical advisory committee to develop policy and a technical plan for instituting newborn screening as a national program. In 2011, that committee presented its policy and technical plan to the government. And they set up a 5-year expansion program so that by end of 2016, all babies in Ghana were supposed to be screened for sickle cell disease. But it hasn't happened because of funding problems. The technical plan was still, we tried to follow that plan. It had addressed these issues: oversight of the program, a scientific advisory committee, program coordination to be set up as a separate unit under the Ministry of Health, responsibilities for the healthcare provider, making sure that babies that are delivered or who have not been tested and who show up for immunization are screened, the right of parents to be educated about screening, and also the right of parents to refuse screening. Otherwise, consent was not required, but parents had the right to refuse, and that happens very, very rarely. Also, matters about how to handle the sample. As some of you may know, even though we use a dry blood spot, the remnant of blood on a dry blood spot is available for extracting DNA from it, and is now becoming an attractive source of DNA in very large, at least childhood populations, to be studied. And so we, part of the technical plan, developed some protections for the human sample. It's owned by the government, and it can only be accessed through permission through the Ministry of Health. Also, screening results are supposed to be very confidential and can only be released to the family or by their consent to health professionals. But the government itself cannot get individual results of screening. And also, we put in plans for the healthcare follow-up for the babies to be screened. We had a policy group, an advocacy and education counseling group, a laboratory operations and standards group, and a clinical management group, and logistical group drafting what now is the technical plan adopted by the country. At the moment, we are screening at only 40 sites. 40 sites, most of them in Kumasi and that area, that region. And then just 2 years ago, we started screening in the capital city at the largest hospital in that city. And the slow growth is entirely due to lack of funding. Government still cannot afford to fund all the babies. By the middle of the first 8 years under NIH funding, we screened about 256,000 babies. And we developed very good data on the frequency of the different hemoglobin genotypes in the country. About 13% of the babies are FAS, meaning that they have sickle cell trait. About 9% are AC, 0.5% are FC, CC, and C beta 0 thalassemia in that group. FS are those who are SS and S beta 0 thalassemia, and very, very few with maybe SHPFH or S delta beta 0 thalassemia. FSA represents those with S beta plus thalassemia, nomenclature that we're trying to change to S beta minus instead of beta plus, because beta minus depicts deficiency, beta plus depicts excess. And so that's the name that is going to be changed in the new ontology. SC is very common in Ghana. It's very close to SS in frequency. So by the middle of last year, we had now screened almost 500,000 babies, and the distribution is pretty much similar to what we had determined in the first 15 years of the screening. The most difficult aspect of the work is actually tracking the babies who have disease. Even though mothers are advised to come back within 2 to 4 weeks of screening for results, because babies born with sickle cell disease are healthy looking, many of them actually don't come back, and so we have to track them. So making home visits to these families is a very integral part of the program, and that is done by community health nurses who collect a lot of information when the mother comes to have a baby so that we can use that information to track them to their homes. Altogether, about 14% of the babies don't come back. Even after all the tracking, we cannot find them. 20% return for results, 80% have to be tracked, and some of them are often not found.
2 minutes more. Yeah.
Okay. So one of the things that we did initially and have continued is that the entire operation has been computer-based. We had to train people to use computers. We manage all the data through a database, and I'm just showing some field shots from it. Here's home visit in the city, home visit in the rural area. And we've made a lot of changes through the program just to improve and also decrease costs. The standard forms that are used is a form that has a filter paper strip on top of it. It's very difficult for printers in Ghana to glue the filter paper to it. So in our new version, we've separated the filter paper card from the form. And now we have even progressed beyond that point. So we have reduced the size of the card, just for the small card for the filter paper, and the form goes separately to the data entry people. Here's the child wondering about the blood. And we have just in the last year instituted an app made by Dimagi, which is a company in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And so instead of filling the paper forms now, we use an Android-based app which collects all the information. As soon as a baby is tested by the nurse and the data entered on the app, the lab receives the information instantly, so that they too, when the results are ready, they enter the results on the app, and the sites also receive that information. And it makes tracking a little faster and easier to do. Clinical management, we do the same standard things. The babies all get penicillin, folic acid, and of course we monitor them very severely for infection, fever and infection, and other complications of the disease. The clinic that we started with 10 patients now has more than 6,000 babies who came in as newborns, and another 3,000 who came in as older children and adults. These are figures from just 2015, and you can see that SS and SC both have very high numbers in their clinic. We are in Central West Africa, where SC is also very, very common. We have started a hydroxyurea treatment program, and a new protocol will actually start hydroxyurea at 1 year of age. Again, it's not affordable for most families, and we are trying to get the National Health Insurance Authority to cover hydroxyurea for the patients. This is a new center that is being built in Kumasi for sickle cell center, originally designed by Brazil government, but unfortunately not funded fully by them. So the Ghana National Petroleum Corporation is helping us fund this center, which we hope will be ready by June next year. So that's it. This child now is happy because my talking is over. She wants to go home. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Dr. Frempong, for this expansive talk and your experience. Thanks so much. Thank you.